Boom, 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 boom. A side, B side. What side are you on?
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
And welcome back to another episode of A Side, B Side Podcast. How you doing, Adam?
I am doing well, Brooke. How are you?
Good. Before we jump into anything, I just want to say one thank you to everybody who has been on this journey with us. You are so amazing. If you would like to continue on this journey with us and support the podcast, you can do that in several ways. Adam, I even surprised you with this, dropping some new shirts on Christmas. Which is today. So Merry Christmas. 2 new shirts on the website. And I think they might be some of my favorites that I've designed so far.
I really like them. They popped up on my feed earlier. And as I am wont to do, instead of commenting, I just hit like.
I didn't even see that you hit like. Did you hit like?
Because that means I hit like.
Oh, okay.
I just think you've already seen me hit like so many times. You're like, whatever.
Oh, there's Adam again.
Oh, he likes again, whatever. He has to. It's like when your parents say they're like, hey, good job. You're like, okay, sure. You paid for it.
I really had fun designing them, and then I was like showing them to my mom, and she's like, well, can you make it look like this a little more? And I'm like, no, I can't.
I don't know. Like, she's the executive producer, so she has quite a bit of pull. I'm just saying.
I know, because what did I do immediately when she said it? Redesign.
Yeah, fixed it. Yeah, exactly. Like, I could be like, hey, could we do this in like a different font? You'd be like, Adam, be quiet. And I would be like, okay.
But she says, can you move this just a half of a piece of a square of an inch? And I'm like, yep, absolutely on it.
Well, yeah. Well, when mom weighs in, whether it be your mom, my mom, or a mime's mom, any mom, we're all going to be like, okay, this is a little bit different. But when an Adam weighs in, like, we've had a lot of Adams in life. We don't need those. we don't need a lot of information from that sector. And I'm saying that as an Adam.
So if you're interested, you can check those out on our website. Bad vibes save lives, which is so true. If you get a bad vibe about somebody, you gotta listen to it. And then the other one.
Yeah, that might be the first t-shirt I buy for my daughter and my son, to be fair. Like, both my kids.
Seriously.
Just wear this.
Because there's crazy people no matter the gender.
And also to kind of warn other people.
Yeah, that's true.
If my kids are wearing them, I'm like, dude, just don't overstep here, because it's going to go bad. Like, just step away.
What do you think about the other one? Trust your guts. They're probably nuts.
I mean, I feel like we're getting in trouble with the peanut lobby, but I like it still,
I mean, I didn't use Mr. Peanut.
Yeah, but nuts, like, people get weird about nuts right now. It's scary. Like, I get legitimately a call a day about somebody asking if there's nuts in our oil. And I'm like, I don't know. We use a lot of oil. There's no nuts in our oil, but like, no, but we have nuts in the kitchen. So like, we can't say it's completely nut free because it's in the air. It's out there. But like, people who are concerned about nuts, they are concerned about nuts.
Well, that's why you trust your guts, because then you stay away from the nuts.
Yeah, because if the nuts get in the guts, it might go fun.
So I want to ask you a couple of things if you've seen these on the news. Apparently in your state, Adam, there's something about the As a true folk assembly trying to get an all-white church. Have you heard this?
I have not heard this, but it does not shock me. For a very long time growing up, Anoka was the Satanist capital of the country. Anton LaVey lived there. His daughter went to Anoka High School. I know people who were in class with her. She seemed very nice. She didn't hex anyone. But Anoka has been the head of the Satanist church in America for a while. So it does not shock me that there is some weird shit going on. I'm sorry.
Both moms.
I'm sorry. Well, mostly to Brooke's mom. Because I'm like, my mom would probably also be like, yeah, I would not say that word, but she's not coming after me. Your mom might come after me. I don't know. Like, I might get a strongly worded letter, and I don't get a lot of mail, so I don't need mail to be negative. So I got to keep it positive.
She'd tell you how much she like you, but then she'd say, "But why do you use such language, Adam?"
Exactly, and that would be worse because it wouldn't be like an angry letter. It would be complimentary for like 90%, and that 10% would kill my soul. Which is exactly what my mom would do, but she'd do it in person. And I'm used to that. I'm just not used to it in letters. So it does not shock me there's some weird stuff happening weirdness happening in Minnesota. But tell me more about this. I've not heard this, to be honest.
So apparently it's a neo-Volkic. It's a group or something. I guess they're similar to the neo-Nazis, and they've been gunning to try to get an all-white church, but I don't think it's going to pass or go through. The last I had seen, it was not successful, but it's just funny that we are in 2021 pretty much, and this is still a thing.
There are a lot of very undiverse locations within Minnesota and within any state. I do know that there are churches within the Lutheran Church in Minnesota who, up until 10 years ago, were still doing every service in German because that is what their community preferred. So when you get into a small community, there is the opportunity for a preference for what they know. And that doesn't shock me that someone would take that preference and then twist it and make it something that is not okay.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing I saw in the news that I wonder if you saw, did you
Please don't be about Minnesota.
No, it's not. This one is in Chicago.
Okay, good.
Another place that you've been.
Like, who likes Chicago?
I like the hot dogs, but there's a lady suing, actually, the police department, and I hope she wins, and I hope she takes them for all their money. This woman in Chicago who was at home.
Oh, yes.
And they break into her. They break in. There's no, I mean, you had the wrong house. You basically held this woman hostage naked. You never told her what you were accusing her of. And there's 9 men standing there with this naked woman handcuffed. You've never told her what she has done wrong. You haven't explained to her why you were in her house. You basically broke into her house and you assaulted her.
And how sad is it that, like, my first reaction is thank God they didn't shoot her. Because
and that's what she thought too.
I mean, that sadly is where we're at as a society. Like, if you told me this story and I didn't know the ending, even knowing the ending, I'm like, well, did this person who was in the wrong place at the wrong time but happened to be the wrong color get shot for no apparent reason because somebody thought they assumed that this was a place that they were serving a warrant or there was some crime committed here, so they were guns blazing first. This is not appropriate, and it's sad that my first reaction is thank God she wasn't shot.
When I first saw the story come up, I was wondering how it ended, but now I know that she is alive and she's well, she's okay. And she is the one that wants this video out because she wants people, because they tried to hide it. They tried to hide it for what? Of course they did. Now they hid that video for over a year.
Here's this completely, like, this woman who is not dangerous at all asking for information, and they're all like, oh, well, you're naked, so like we'll just keep not giving you information because we're angry at you because we think you did something wrong.
We're not going to cover you up. We're going to let you stand here naked in front of a bunch of men. We're not going to tell you what you did wrong. And we're going to hold you here for what was it like? It was like 13 or 14 minutes before they finally even covered her up.
Give her something. But at that point, like, damage is already done. You've already been embarrassed. You've already been humiliated. You've already been put on display. And historically, that is not shocking given the cultural disparity and the race disparity. Like, this is endemic of history. Instead, they're like, okay, well, we'll just not do anything about that. Like, how do the people, and I don't know, thank God I am not a officer of the law, because I'd be really bad at it. Like, I am a pushover. I would let everyone get away with stuff. I really would.
And of course,
I would.
And of course, you know how I feel. I know that's not every law enforcement agency, and I know that's not every officer, but it has become such an issue. And the fact that the chief or whoever didn't immediately try to rectify this, and now she's having to sue because they tried to hide the fact that their officers were wrong. That's the problem that I have.
Well, and also, like you said, how many men were in this room? Like,
there was like 9.
Like, how did not one of them say, like, this isn't cool, let's do something different, let's not do this?
Ma'am, can we get you a robe? Look, I can't let you leave this area because we're trying to sort this out, but can I go get a robe for you?
Yeah.
How hard is that?
Like, it's not hard. It's like legitimately super easy, because I'm assuming she's got a robe or like anything. They're all wearing jackets. Like, I just like how after
off the bed, which is what somebody eventually did.
How after everything that has happened in the last 9 months, not even a year, in the last 9 months, did someone in that room not realize that this is a bad idea?
Yeah.
Like, if we're not even to that point, like, we got a long way to go.
Anyway, on a happier note, Adam, you still owe me $100 from last week.
Yeah. I owe a lot of people a lot of money.
You bet on a family stone. You said, I bet $100, and you have not paid up.
I've not. That's going to be a lot of coffees.
It is. Yeah. And I'm here for that. I'm ready for that. I'm ready.
I'm just going to like kick that can down the road to when we are able to leave states, and then we're going to do like an in-person event somewhere, and I'll pay for your ticket to go somewhere.
Okay. And the coffee?
And the coffee. Yeah. Well, I understand, like, back in the day, and we know this, like, I was always late for everything, as is my nature. But when we were doing a morning show and I would know that I was running late, I would stop and get coffee for you, because I knew that was the only thing that was going to save me if I was just a little bit late. Mm-hmm. If I was super late, I just came in and I was like, wasn't gonna matter if I got you coffee because I'm already in trouble.
Right, you're like I'm real. You know,
I'm very bad at mornings, so I should never do a morning show. Which is why we do this podcast at like 10 p.m.
Right. Fortunately, you weren't like super. I'm not gonna say you weren't late. You weren't super late often.
I like that last part. You said often.
Often.
I was always there by the second break.
That's true. You were always there by the second break.
Which, for anyone not knowing, is at least 20 minutes into the first hour of our show, which is not a good sign.
Oh my goodness! So this week, Adam, I watched Ripper on Netflix, and that's about the Yorkshire Ripper, not Jack the Ripper from like the 1800s, but in the 1970s there was
an entirely different Ripper.
Although he did call himself that, I think he kind of nicknamed himself that.
Yeah. I can get like if you're gonna be like a stabby guy, like you kind of want to be a ripper of some sort, I guess. I mean, I guess, yeah. If you're gonna model yourself after a ripper, Jack is the one. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot of others. Also, I watched Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Chadwick Boseman's last movie. Yes, I have heard it's really good. I've not watched it yet. I was under the impression it wasn't out yet, which I'm bad at impressions. It literally just came out. I will say I
adored Chadwick's performance in it, and I think it's one of his better performances.
I mean, which is hard to say because all of his stuff's really good. It's the first one where I've seen the previews, and I know this is I only think this because of, I know, like, I have seen him in a dozen things and never thought he looked sick.
Right.
But then I see this one knowing he was sick, and I think that he looks sick, but he still doesn't look sick. I mean, like, I wish I looked as good as he looks sick.
And I think that's it. I think if you didn't know he was sick when he made this movie, you wouldn't think anything of it.
Like, I go back and I watch 21 Bridges, which is just generic action movie, which he's really good in. Mm-hmm. And I still sometimes think, like, okay, he looks a little sickly, but he never looks sickly, because when you are the, like, epitome of man, and I mean man in sort of like human form, like, he looked amazing.
Yeah.
As a human, like, he had the ability to work out all the time and everything. But even when he looks quote unquote sick, he looks better than most people.
It was good. It was different than what I expected, but it was still very enjoyable. And like I said, he does a phenomenal job. Viola does it's Viola, you know.
Yeah.
So it was really good. Check it out. It's on Netflix. Let me know what you think. A couple of shows real fast because we are really running our mouths.
We were gonna, like, we talked about doing this whole, like, short thing tonight, and I have failed.
Well, that's our Christmas gift. It's a little bit longer this week.
It was supposed to be a little shorter.
I know. Billie Piper from Doctor Who. She was Rose on Doctor Who. You know, I love some Doctor Who.
Yeah.
She has a show on HBO Max called I Hate Susie. It's hilarious. Check it out. Okay. And then Anna Kendrick has a show on HBO Max called Love Life. So some non-crimey, make you laugh, put you in your feels kind of shows.
Yeah. I love a lot of Anna Kendrick. So.
Oh yeah, you'll love this.
Yeah.
Because it's an HBO show, so it's a lot of Anna Kendrick.
Adam is already talking about stopping the recording so we can watch this show.
So, what did you watch this week, or are you going to save that for your A side?
No, I really, it's been a very weird week. I've been working a lot because we're trying to do this whole pandemic thing, and I haven't really been watching a lot of anything. I've been playing a lot of games, which is fine, but more than anything, I've just been kind of just trying to get towards. It makes me happy that we are like a week away from 2021, and for me, it's just been kind of trying to get to that because I don't know. It's been a weird year.
2020 sucked.
Yeah, but we all said 2019 sucked, and like people said 2018 sucked. Like, years sucked.
Oh no, it's a whole different level of suck.
It is. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on 2021 to be like, it's got to come in like the avenging angel and make everything okay.
If it doesn't have murder hornets, it's already a better year.
Yeah, but to be fair, 2020 really have murder hornets. It had the rumor of murder hornets, but did the murder hornets ever murder anybody?
Animals. I
mean, in the grand scheme of things, of 2020. I feel like murder hornets have become this like false herring, red herring, like this false, prophet. Everyone's like, oh, murder hornets. I was like, guys, we had a lot of worse stuff. Like, don't blame the hornets.
Fine.
Like, yeah,
no wildfires in Australia this year or in 2021. It's a better year.
Yeah, we forgot about the wildfires, didn't we? Because that was like 10 months ago.
I know.
Everyone was super scared about those, and then society collapsed for a little bit. So 2021, no expectations. Like this is. I am legitimately doing like the Tinder like midlife crisis bio right now. For 2021, I'm like, no expectations. I just want to be like here and we experience things together and like don't be the worst. That's all I'm asking of 2021.
Oh, all right. So are you ready for your A side?
I am. I am very ready.
All right, so we're going to jump into that in just a second.
As Brooke knows, I am not much for holidays, quote unquote. I would rather have a gift on a random Tuesday or give a gift on a random Tuesday rather than a supposed holiday like Christmas or Thanksgiving or 4th of July or whatever, birthdays even. It always has felt, ever since I was a kid, that it was a setup. Like you expect it to be this magical, amazing thing. And like, there's just no way that it can ever live up to that. And so for me, holidays have always kind of been a disappointment, which makes me a bit of a Scrooge, especially because I would rather work on holidays because most often I get a little bit extra pay if I'm working on a holiday as opposed to a regular Friday. So I'll take that extra pay and move on. But I do truly love one holiday movie, and it's not the one you're thinking of because it would be so stereotypical to claim that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but it's not.
It is.
It's a movie that happens at Christmas, but it is not a movie about Christmas, and that is the difference.
Bruce Willis said it's a Christmas movie, so it's a Christmas movie.
Right. I'm not going to argue with him because he could beat me in the face very quickly, but it's still not a Christmas movie. A Christmas movie has to do with the spirit of Christmas. Die Hard happens at Christmas, but there is nothing that happens in Die Hard that is about the spirit of Christmas.
John McClane saves the world. That is the spirit of love and Christmas.
It's really not, though. The spirit of Christmas is more about others and subjugating yourself in some way and giving up something that you care about. And to be fair, Die Hard isn't about not giving up at all, which is an amazing thing to support. But the only Christmas movie that I truly like is The Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's a good one.
And that is because I think it is the most human of all Muppet movies, which kind of makes no sense because one of the great things about the Muppets is that they are otherworldly. They are human, but not human. They are people that we can identify with, but also they have the freedom to be something else. And the reason that The Muppet Christmas Carol is my favorite Christmas movie and my favorite Muppet movie is that it takes that idea of humanity and instead of running away from it, it uses the Muppets as this mirror to hold up against humanity, which in and of itself is exactly what Dickens was trying to do with The Christmas Carol the first time, which was to write a story that holds a mirror up to humanity. And it only works. Like, it could have gone 1,000 different ways. And Michael Caine, who is one of the more, like, you see him in everything else. He is serious. He is not going to play the joke. He's never in a Farrelly Brothers movie. Like, he is always a serious actor. And that is why him as Scrooge in the middle of the Muppet Christmas Carol is perfect. Because he never flinches. He never winks. He never plays at the camera. He never says this is a kid's movie. He never decides to act like anything other than the Shakespearean actor that he is. And that gives everything else more gravitas than it should probably have had. So when the Muppets Christmas Carol was first ideated, Jim Henson was still around. And the ghost of Christmas past was going to be Gonzo. And the ghost of Christmas present was going to be Miss Piggy. And it was going to be very, very Muppety. Just before the script was finished for the Muppet Christmas Carol, Jim Henson passed away. And Jim Henson was this sort of talismanic figure of children's cinema for years that people really never got to know. Like, we knew Kermit and the kids knew Kermit, but we never knew that was a person. And there was a legitimate person behind that, and that was Jim Henson. And he and his philosophy ran and determined how any Muppet movie was going to be portrayed. And this was the first time in the history of the Muppets, this was the line of delineation where Jim Henson was no longer in control. His son, Brian, was the director of this film. And for the first time ever, someone else played Kermit. To the point where, like, the gentleman who played Kermit was so worried about playing Kermit that the night before he was to have his first scene as the Muppeteer of Kermit, he had a dream in which the dream was Jim Henson telling him that his nervousness about playing Kermit would pass and he should run with it.
Oh, but that sounds like a very Jim Henson-ish thing.
It is. Like, and it was like Steve Whitmer, who played Kermit in the Muppet Christmas Carol and in many other movies, knew Jim Henson, and like he still was scared to fully embody this character. And so he has this dream. Jim Henson in the dream doesn't say like, go with my blessing. He said, Steve Whitmer walks to him and says, I am so nervous about playing this character. And Jim Henson puts his fingers on his chin and thinks, which was one of his common sort of like physical movements, and says, this too will pass. Not saying like it's okay that, and I want you to go with my blessing. It's like, hey, you know what? You're scared right now, but it'll pass and it'll be good. The Muppet Christmas Carol is the first Muppet movie, and I think one of two Muppet movies ever that focuses more on the humans than the Muppets. And to me, that is the brilliance of it. And that by taking Gonzo from being the ghost of the future and turning him into a Muppet personification of Charles Dickens with his sidekick Rizzo as the narrator.
I do love Rizzo.
Oh, it makes it so much more powerful because it gives, and I will always say this, and it is probably something that I will go to my grave believing, is that every story should have a audience participation character. And by taking Gonzo from a ghost and turning him into Charles Dickens and giving him that looking into the fourth wall and talking to the audience and giving them the exposition of what is happening makes the story move so much better. And I think that is where it separates itself, not only as a Muppet movie, but as an adaptation of A Christmas Carol as a literature work. Because it is beautiful as something you read, but it's been turned into so many plays and movies because it's a great story. But if you don't have a touchstone character like Gonzo playing Charles Dickens, it's a little too ethereal. You need somebody pulling you back, giving you context, letting you know where we are in the story. Is this a ghost of Christmas future? Is this a ghost of Christmas past? Is it a ghost of Christmas present? Like, where are we? It gives you a touchstone character. And that is why so many movies work, is because they have that character.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not to step too far away from Jim Henson, but within the Disney Lucas stratosphere, that's why Star Wars connects with more people than Star Trek. And I love both of these. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to make people mad. But
probably me, because you know I'm a Trekkie.
I love Trek as well. Star Wars has a character that gives people an in. And it's Han Solo. Han Solo doesn't have any freaking idea what's going on. And he will admit that left and right, and it gives you a touchstone to try to figure it out. Star Trek, everyone's a scientist. Everyone knows what's going on. And if you don't know, it's hard for you to get in. And to me, that is the binary difference between the two. Star Trek, if you know, you know. Mm-hmm. Star Wars, here's a guy to explain it to you. And it's usually Harrison Ford. And that's where A Muppet Christmas Carol figures out the issue with most adaptations of Charles Dickens is not easy to read. All of his books are, I apologize to Brooke's mom, all of his books are fucking depressing. They're very sad.
They are.
They are.
Really
it's just like dark, like everything is bad, and then like maybe at the end finding a glimmer of hope. But like it's a hard environment to exist in. And the Muppet Christmas Carol takes that and puts the most lovable, identifiable character, Gonzo, as someone who doesn't fit really anywhere, and makes him Charles Dickens and gives him the opportunity to tell the story. And to me, that is what makes the Muppet Christmas Carol not only the best Muppet movie ever, but the most accessible adaptation of Charles Dickens' amazing work. And I say this as someone who often feels like they're Scrooge. It is the best Christmas movie ever.
Okay, but what about, and it's not my favorite Christmas movie ever, but I do love it. But when you look at adaptations of that, what about Bill Murray's Scrooged? I mean, because it takes, like you said, a really heavy book, a really heavy topic, and really makes it funny.
It makes it funny. I mean, the big thing between Scrooged and the Muppet Christmas Carol for me is that, for me, Michael Caine as Scrooge, I believe his change of heart more than I believe Bill Murray's.
Why? Because Groundhog Day, he'd already done it. You just don't think it could happen again? Or what?
Because he is so much better at being an asshole that I don't actually think he'd stop being an asshole.
Yeah, but have you ever seen the Bill Murray tweets and stuff? He's actually a pretty cool dude.
Oh no, I'm saying the character as in Scrooged. It's harder for me to believe that the character in Scrooged finds redemption than it is Michael Caine as Scrooge in Muppet Christmas Carol.
Okay, all right.
That's what I say. Side. It took a lot of weird turns. It was going to be a short episode. It's not going to be a short episode.
All right, so that's okay.
We doomed ourselves by saying it was going to be a short episode.
I know. But before we not completely jump out of the A side,
yeah.
What are because I know you love lists and I know you have one.
Oh.
Top 5 Christmas movies. Go.
Top 5.
You don't get to explain them. You just get to name them.
See, I don't like Christmas movies as a rule.
All right, Scrooge. Just name 5.
So the Muppet Christmas Carol is really great. There was this movie that we watched a lot when I was a kid that had Dudley Moore, and he worked for a corporation and then saved Christmas at the end, which I don't remember the name of. No, I don't think it was Arthur. Might have been Arthur. I don't know. 3 would be Santa Claus, maybe. 4.
Santa Claus is my favorite.
Miracle in 34th Street. That's pretty good. Even though I think the whole idea of Santa as a guy who comes down your chimney is a horrible thing to teach children. And also,
as a believe that.
No.
Did your kids not ever know that Santa came down the chimney?
Oh hell no. My kids knew that Saint Nicholas was a idea, and they talked about how like he would bring kids shoes. That got us in trouble in kindergarten. But no, as a single parent or divorced parent, I was never going to allow some mythical creature to have credit for the gifts that I worked hard for. And sometimes I had to explain to my kids, like, why can't I be at stuff? Or why do I have to work? It's because I am working to provide for a house and home and also Christmas gifts. I wasn't going to give that credit to some fat dude that didn't exist. I'm the fat dude.
Well, you really are a Grinch.
I am a Grinch. And then I would say probably number 4 is the cartoon Grinch, and number 5 is the live action Grinch with Jim Carrey.
All right. Well, you've got Scrooge, you've got Grinch, and Grinch. That explains a lot.
It really does. But hey, the Muppet Christmas Carol, I think it's a great, example of Christmas cheer.
All right. So there you go. That's the A sign.
That was all the A side. It took an hour, but it's Jesus.
This is Kevin Armstrong, your host for Movie Battle. Each episode, we take 2 films and put a superfan of each against one another to decide which one is best. The only rule we have is that you come correct. If you're interested in being a guest on Movie Battle, please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
All right. So not so long ago, we talked about a serial killer that you could kind of have some sympathy for. It was episode 19.
Mm-hmm.
You remember we talked about him? It was like, I mean, he's a killer, but he killed bad people.
Yeah. And it was this the guy who killed bad people in jail?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's not so bad.
Right,
Could we get more of those guys? Decrease the bad guy population? Not bad.
But what about when you have a victim that you lack sympathy for?
Isn't that kind of the same? Because all the victims, I didn't have any sympathy for any of the bad guy victims.
Okay, a victim not in jail that you lack sympathy for.
Well, I read a lot of comic books, so I feel like this is directly down my alley.
All right. I think, Adam, this story is going to sit really well with you.
I like it.
So this is the story of the death of Ken Rex McElroy.
I already don't like him. That's too many names.
And the town that's responsible.
The town?
The town. Yeah.
Damn. All right.
Okay. So Ken was born on
I can't get enough people to come to any party. So we get an entire town to commit a murder. I'm impressed.
Yeah. You don't want the town coming to this kind of party, but okay. So Ken was born on June 1st, 1934. He was the 15th of 16 children.
Damn.
That's how they got down in the 30s. Okay.
Well, yeah, that's like, these people were probably like, hey, tell me more about these condoms.
There was no HBO Max and no Netflix, so they were bored. They were doing something.
Well, I'm assuming the family needed a lot of people for either a football team or a farm or a small army.
Well, they actually were a poor migrant tenant farming couple, Tony McElroy and Mabel Lister McElroy. So the couple actually moved from Overland Park, Kansas, to the Ozarks, which is located in Missouri. You've probably heard about the TV show on Netflix.
Yeah, no, I got relatives down there.
And then they settled in Skidmore, Missouri. At the age of
unfortunate name.
At the age of 15, Ken dropped out of the 8th grade. Let me say that for you again. At the age of 15, Ken dropped out of the 8th grade.
To be fair, though, we're talking the 1930s.
Well, he was born in the 30s, so.
Even 1940s, 8th grade. I mean, that's not bad.
At 15, typically you're 13, 12, 13 in the 8th grade.
11.
5. 8 plus 5.
I'm not good with math.
Because you go into kindergarten usually about 5, so 8 plus 5, about 13, 12, 13.
All right. So like he was running a little bit behind.
So he drops out of school and he quickly becomes known as a raccoon hunter, a cattle and hog rustler, a thief, and a womanizer.
To be fair, in 8th grade, I would have been super interested in most of those titles.
Whatever. So Ken was suspected of involvement in the theft of alcohol and grain and livestock and antiques for over 20 years. He seemed to avoid conviction of any kind. 21 times charges were levied against him, and he beat them every single time. He was
like
represented.
Physically?
No, well, yeah, a little bit. So Ken was represented by a guy named Richard Gene McFadden, who was phenomenal at getting delays of trials, and he was also always asking for change of venues, which is also going to create a delay. So he was the king of delays.
He played the system.
Exactly. So on top of all these delays, witnesses would refuse to testify because they were intimidated. Ken would intimidate them. Now, mind you, he's tall. I don't know his exact height, but he's a very tall, 270-pound sideburn figure. So he's a massive, intimidating dude.
Yeah.
He would frequently stalk his targets. He would follow them. He would park outside their home. He would stare into their windows, and he would just taunt them.
So this would be before stalking as a crime was on the books.
Way before.
Because that's stalking.
So Ken, at this time, had fathered at least 10 children with different women. He met his last wife, Trina McLeod, when she was 12 years old and in the 8th grade. As we mentioned earlier, the typical age of an 8th grader.
Yeah.
He was actually dating her mom when they met.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. When he met 12-year-old Trina McLeod. Oh. Ken sees Trina and he is completely and totally head over heels. I don't know how you're head over heels for a 12-year-old when you're a grown man, but whatever.
And
so
enthralled in lust.
Yeah. So he went to great outlandish measures to spend time with Trina, even paying a young boy to pretend to be Trina's date. Okay, who's going on dates at 12? Like, no.
Yeah, no, that's more common than you think.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not in the 1940s, but
okay.
It's pretty common now.
Well, he began sleeping with, no, let me rephrase that. He began raping 12-year-old Trina because I don't care what you say. I don't care if you say she agreed. She couldn't consent. She was 12 and you're a grown man. So by the time Trina was 14, she was pregnant and he made her move in with him and his wife, Alice. Some other reports say there was actually another woman in the house named Marcia that lived with Ken and Alice prior to Trina. Remember, womanizer.
Yeah. What?
Uh-huh. So 16 days after the birth of her baby boy, Trina and Alice fled Ken's house and they went to Trina's mom and stepdad's house.
Yeah, well, doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Within hours, Ken had tracked them down and he forced them both back to his home at gunpoint. Ken then beat Alice mercilessly. Next, he held a rifle on Trina and made her strip her clothing and perform demeaning sex acts. After all of this, he drove over to Trina's parents' house. The couple happened to be away for that afternoon. He went in the house. He shot the family dog and then set the house on fire after pouring gasoline throughout. Okay, look, I don't want you to set my house on fire or anything. Why you got to shoot my dog?
Yeah, just let it go. It's going to run.
What did the dog do to you, man?
I'm literally holding my hands over my dog's ears right now.
Yeah. So the house was completely gutted. Of course, poor dog, unfortunately, didn't survive. So 2 days later, after this incident, Trina has to go to the doctor with her son in Mound City, Missouri. And the doctor knew something was wrong. And he was after some coaxing, he was able to get the full story of what happened out of Trina. So child welfare and social services were notified, and the baby boy was placed in foster care, and Trina was hospitalized, mostly to keep her safe away from Ken.
Yeah.
In June of 1973, Ken was indicted for arson, assault, and statutory rape. He was arrested, he was booked, he was arraigned, and released on $2,500 bail.
Why released?
Because he always got released. Remember, 21 charges so far, now 22. So, yeah. And the 21 before, he had beat them all.
Yeah.
So both Trina and the baby were placed into foster care in Maryville, Missouri. But, of course, this is Ken, and he is a rotten bastard, and he was able to find out where they were. Ken found the home, and as he tended to do, he intimidated the people inside. He parked outside of the house, and he just stared. Day after day, he'd park outside the house and stare at the house and stare at the people inside the house. Eventually, he learned the identity of the homeowners, and he began intimidating them. He would call, he'd make threatening phone calls, and of course, Trina was completely terrified by the calls.
As I'm sure anyone would be.
Right. But get this, he even told the family that he would trade them girl for girl because he knew where the family's biological daughter went to school and he knew her bus route. So he was threatening to kidnap their daughter. The prosecutor piled on 8 additional felony charges for molestation on Trina. So his attorney, Richard McFadden, did what he does best, and he was able to split the charges into 2 separate trials. He sought changes of venues for each, and then he sought and fought for all the delays that came with the case. Mm-hmm. So after a year, Trina told the foster family she was leaving and she was going to stay with her grandmother. No one really believed that, but there was not much that they could do.
Like, yeah, what are you going to do?
So now remember, one of the charges that Ken had filed against him was statutory rape. So Ken and his attorney decided, hey, I can beat this charge if I marry Trina. Because then, as his spouse, she couldn't be forced to testify against him. So there was only one issue with Ken's plan. He was still legally married to his first wife, Sharon. Okay, so Sharon and Ken hadn't lived together for years. But his attorney, Richard McFadden, was able to arrange a quick dissolution of their marriage so that Ken could marry Trina. Therefore, she could not testify against him. Mm-hmm. Now, Trina, again, was 15 at this time and needed parental consent, which, of course, the parents gave because he'd already burned their house down once. So Trina moves back in with Ken and Alice. On July 27th, about a year later, July 27th, 1976, a farmer by the name of Romaine Henry said Ken shot him twice.
What?
He'd been working on equipment in his shed when he heard shots on his land. So he went to investigate. He got in his truck and he drove out to the end of his property, and he found Ken's truck parked close to his property line. And Ken was standing outside of his truck holding a shotgun. Ken accused Romaine of being at his house. He said, quote, "Were you the dirty son of a bitch at my place in a white Pontiac?" Romaine is like, I don't know what you're even talking about.
Also very specific.
Right. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. So Ken shot him twice.
Oh, that's not how you interrogate people.
So Ken's gun jammed, and Romaine used that as an opportunity to get away. He made it to the hospital. Ken was arrested the next day, charged with assault with intent to kill. Not only did Ken deny shooting Romaine, he denied even being on the property. Of course, Ken called in his legal champion, Richard McFadden, who used his typical tactics of change of venue requests and repeated trial delays. Ken used his typical tricks. He parked outside of Romaine's home at least 100 times between the shooting and the trial date. Let me stress that again.
Yeah,
100 times.
I thought I misheard, but I didn't mishear.
No.
That's ridiculous.
Is crazy. So when the case went to trial, Romaine testified that Ken was the man who had in fact shot him, and 2 neighbors even testified that they saw Ken speeding away. Ken's attorney was able to produce 2 witnesses, both raccoon hunters, who testified that they were with Ken that day. They were out hunting. So it was impossible for him to have shot Romaine because they were out raccoon hunting together.
Yeah. I mean, because there is no group of people that is more trustworthy on earth than raccoon hunters.
So the jury voted to acquit unanimously.
Damn it, jury. No one wants raccoons that much. What? You make a soup?
The hats. Gotta have the hats.
I guess that's fair. I guess it was probably a Tennessee thing.
We're in Missouri. Keep up.
Nah, I mean, Daniel Boone was all over the place.
So Henry McLean is the author of a book called In Broad Daylight, and he wrote this because he actually went and spent quite a bit of time in Skidmore. Actually, I think he lived there for a bit of time. And he wrote, when the town of Skidmore saw a guilty man get acquitted in the legal system, they said, well, we're on our own here. Law enforcement was terrified. Juries wouldn't convict. He would scare the shit out of jurors, put rattlesnakes in their mailboxes. If you're a juror and you know McElroy is coming after you, what are you going to do? So things really take a big shift on April 25th of 1980. This is when a chain of events starts that will forever impact Ken McElroy and the town of Skidmore. On this day, several of Ken's 11 children now, because of Trina, stopped into the B&B grocery store to buy some candy. Well, there was some type of confusion because it led to an argument. Like one of the kids meant to pay for something or forgot to pay for something, and the kids and the clerk got into an argument. Well, the store is owned by Ernest Bowenkamp and his wife Lois. So the kids obviously take after their dad because they fussed and cussed. And
yeah, so I didn't pay for something on accident.
Right. Yeah. So Bo, the owner of the store, tried to settle the disagreement. Ken came back to inquire as to what happened, and Bo explained it to him. And then Ken tried to buy some cigarettes, and Bo told him no, him and his family were banned from the store. Well, Ken didn't like that. So the intimidation against Bo and his family began. He stalked them. He even threatened Bo. He drove past their house several times that night. A few days later, Ken called Lois and offered her $100 to fight Trina in the street. To street fight Trina, who is by this time 18, 19. Lois, while outspoken and feisty, was 50 years old.
And also, we don't fight in the street.
Right.
It's not a thing we do.
Lois declined the idea, calling it absurd. And of course, we've learned a little bit about Ken by now. Mm-hmm. And with knowledge of Ken, the Bowenkamps knew it was just a matter of time before he escalated things with them. Several nights in a row, Ken drove over to the Bowenkamps' house, fired shots in the air, and left. He would do this multiple times each night. He would drive to their house, fire shots in the air, and leave.
It's just a waste of ammunition.
I guess he don't care. He must have endless ammunition or something.
To him, that's a couple bucks.
So on July 8th of 1980, Bo had to go back to the store after hours to meet up with an air conditioning repairman. While he waited, he was breaking down some cardboard boxes. And while he was doing so, Ken approaches. They have a brief exchange. Bo goes back to his business of breaking down boxes, basically turning his back on Ken. When he turns back around, he sees Ken standing there with a shotgun pointed at him. Ken pulls...
Bad choice, Ken.
Ken pulls the trigger, shooting Bo in multiple spots. Fortunately, Bo survives, and Ken was arrested within hours and charged with attempted murder. But by the next morning, he was free on $30,000 bail.
What?
Uh-huh. And by that night, he and Trina were at the local D&G tavern having drinks. Bo, on the other hand, spent 10 days in the hospital.
Yeah, because you don't get shot with a shotgun and just go dancing that night.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it was just 10 days, to be honest with you.
I'm surprised he's not dead.
Just to show you what a piece of work that this guy Ken is or was, he threatens a part-time town marshal and the state trooper who arrested him. He drove past the trooper's house, scaring his wife. The part-time marshal turned in his badge because he said what he was getting paid wasn't worth the hassle.
Yeah, no, he's not wrong.
So Richard McFadden, doing what he does, had the trial delayed again, and he had the venue changed. Finally, on June 25th, 1981, the trial begins. Well, like in the case of Romaine Henry, Richard McFadden was able to produce a witness who testified that she just happened to be in the area just as the shooting occurred, and she saw the whole thing. She claimed to have seen Bo lunge at Ken and Ken fire in self-defense.
Of course.
Now, mind you, this is June 25th, 1981, or around that. So 9 months after this happened. So you didn't remember this before now?
No.
Uh-huh.
It came to me in a dream.
Right. So the jury quickly returns a verdict to convict.
They're like, fuck Ken. Sorry. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, moms.
Moms. All
but
the
seriously,
moms.
Seriously, fuck Ken.
Yeah, for real. So he was given a 2-year sentence, which I'm like, 2 years. But here's the thing. They weren't told about Ken's past. That was not allowed to be brought up in trial.
Yeah, it's like previous crimes. Yeah.
So after the conviction, the judge continued Ken's bail and ordered him released while awaiting the 25-day appeal window.
This ain't gonna go well.
4 days after his conviction, he was back at the local D&G tavern. This time, he walked in carrying an M1 Garand assault rifle with a sharpened bayonet attached. And he bragged and boasted about what he was going to do with the weapon and how he planned to use it on Bo Bowenkamp. He said, quote, he'd shoot the old man in the head, then carve him up like a turkey. So those threats prompted locals to talk to law enforcement, and Nottoway County Sheriff Dan Esty suggested that they set up a neighborhood watch. Authorities at that point could have revoked bail because, that's a threat. But
that's a threat. Yeah.
On July 10th, 1981, the townspeople of Skidmore planned to meet at the Legion Hall to oppose Ken's freedom. So they were going to get together and they were going to all drive over to this other town and demand that the judge lock him up.
Yeah, because he's killing people and scaring people and threatening people.
He's intimidating people. He's raping children. I mean,
he's a bad dude.
This is like the worst of dudes, okay? That morning, they find out that the trial that was supposed to be taking place that day, that they were going to tell the judge, lock him up, was delayed yet again for another 10 days to July 20th. Because
this lawyer is working way too hard for what he's getting paid.
First of all, how much is he getting paid, and where is Ken getting all this money?
Yeah, well, this dude is just like I got my one thing. I'm gonna keep doing it. I'm gonna like stall, delay, switch venues. Like he's really good at what he does.
Really good. So this time it's supposedly because Ken's attorney had a conflict, but I'm thinking delay tactic. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Like he doesn't want to get lynched.
So there was no hearing, but most of the men in the town still met up at the Legion. And while the men were meeting and discussing any options possible, like maybe the neighborhood watch idea that the sheriff had mentioned, Ken and Trina arrive at the local D&G tavern again. Mind you, this is like morning time still.
Like whatever, we'll just like roll in. We're untouchables.
So the men at the lodge got word of Ken's location, and they traveled as a posse basically to the tavern. They all pile in the bar room. Ken finishes his drinks. He buys a 6-pack. He goes out to his truck. The rest of the pack travels out after him, and then a shot is fired. Someone shot Ken while he sat in his truck. Then another shot. Then another shot. Multiple shots rang out, and Ken was hit twice, once by a centerfire rifle and once by a .22 rimfire rifle. In all, there were approximately 46 to 50 people present to witness the shooting, including Trina McElroy, who was in the truck next to her husband at the time of the incident. No one called for an ambulance. Which I'd like to point out, when I say no one, not even Trina.
Well, yeah, I would have thought if she could have pulled the trigger, she would have.
I don't know, because by this time, she claims to have seen the gunman. She reports the gunman, but yet you didn't call the ambulance. 46 to 50 people, and only Trina reports seeing a shooter.
Which would have been 2 shooters at least.
At least, a bare minimum, 2 shooters. She could only target 1. Everyone else either didn't see the shooter, didn't see the shooting, couldn't identify who shot him.
Didn't remember what day it was.
There was a shooting? When? I
was
there?
Just outside.
Right.
You know what? The leaves were beautiful that day.
I heard not a thing but the birds in the sky singing a song.
And all of a sudden, there was some blood over there. It's weird.
So a task force of 23 officers from 6 different agencies were called into Skidmore.
Oh, come on.
No witnesses came forward. A telephone hotline was set up for tips. No one called. I'm sorry, I should not laugh.
No, this is Wild West. Like when someone goes too far, they get done, and then nobody remembers what happened. Like this is
wild. The FBI even ordered, the Justice Department ordered an FBI investigation, and still no one claimed to see anything.
Well, yeah, you got to think the FBI agents were like, hey, did you see anything? Nope. Okay, I'll go back.
Right, exactly. So in September of 1982, the federal probe ended without any indictments. The FBI turned over their evidence to the district attorney, who declined to prosecute. Since it is a murder case, and there are no statutes on murder cases, it is still technically open, but it's cold as a freezer.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like Trina minded that much.
Well, Trina, I think she must have learned some tactics, because we'll see here in a second what she does. Well, on July 14th of that year, Ken McElroy was buried at Memorial Park Cemetery in St. Joseph, Missouri. I can't imagine that it was a big crowd. Or maybe it was to make sure.
To be fair, he's got a lot of kids.
Well, that's true. That's true.
That's a crowd in of itself.
that is.
You got 11 kids. That's a lot of people.
Actually, by the time it was all said and done, he had 15.
Okay, so that's like a small village.
Yeah.
That showed up.
So on July 9th of 1984, Richard McFadden filed a $5 million wrongful death lawsuit on behalf of Trina McElroy against the city of Skidmore, the county of Nottoway, Sheriff Danny Estes, Mayor Steve Peters, and Del Clement. That's the man that Trina accused of shooting Ken, who had never been charged.
Yeah. So this lawyer is still getting money.
So that's why I say I think a little bit of Ken rubbed off on Trina, because even though she didn't call an ambulance or anything like that, she was like, I'm still going to get some money out of this.
Yeah, I think Trina and the lawyer probably were in cahoots.
Probably.
Like, we hate this dude, but let's also make money off of it.
Right. Like, this dude's a bad dude, but let's see what we can get. Now, remember, it was a $5 million lawsuit that was filed, but they settled out of court for $17,600. So not quite the $5 million they were hoping for.
No, they were like, "Hey, can you cover a little bit of the funeral costs and maybe like some stuff for his 17 kids?"
Yeah, for his 3 football teams worth of kids.
Yeah, and they're like, "Okay, here's $1,000 per kid, and please don't ever have more."
So, for the settlement, that was $17,600. The county paid $12,600. The town of Skidmore paid $2,000, and Del Clement, again, never admitted any guilt, paid $3,000. The town says it was not a case of vigilantism.
It was just like It's like hunting gone wrong.
But was it? I mean, when you seek justice on your own, isn't that vigilantism?
Yeah,
I'm not saying you're wrong, because dude was terrible.
But if they ever admit that, then they gotta it's a whole legal thing, and
yeah.
It was just like somebody had target practice that went very wrong.
So Trina eventually remarried, and she moved to Lebanon, Missouri. Ken's kids,
which is not that far.
Is it not?
It's still in Missouri. You're within an hour.
That's true.
It's like Missouri ain't that big.
So Ken's kids, approximately 15 of them with 4 different women, are scattered throughout Missouri. Richard McFadden, still in practice to this day.
Yeah.
Bo Bowenkamp, who was 70 at the time of the shooting, died 10 years later. And Lois went on to serve on the town council. Trina McElroy died of cancer on January 24th of 2012. It was her 55th birthday.
Oof, still so young.
I just can't believe I'd never heard of this case before, because there's like a ton of pop culture references. 60 Minutes ran a segment on it in 1982, which, I mean, I don't remember that one, but Harry McLean's book In Broad Daylight was adapted into a made-for-TV movie in 1991 called In Broad Daylight. Names were changed in it, but it starred Brian Dennehy, Marcia Gay Harden, and Christopher Cooper.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I know all of those people.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how? I don't remember. Maybe
but yeah, made for TV in 1991. Like, come on.
Yeah.
That's
Of course, the names were changed. So Ken's and
it wasn't going to video.
It's true. But that might also be why, since the names were changed, it probably wouldn't have rang any bells, because Ken's name was changed to Len Rowan. In 2014, a book called Pollyanna's Revenge: How Memory and Emotion Foster Happiness profiled the story in a chapter on describing the psychological effects of anger, fear, and depression. The case was the inspiration for The Hunting Accident, the second episode of Renegade in 1992. And then Adam...
I'm sorry, Renegade? With Lorenzo Lamas?
Uh-huh.
All right. So yeah, I've probably seen that.
Okay, but wait, check this out, because I know you've seen this. The movie Roadhouse was inspired by events of the case.
Get Out. Really?
Yes. Right?
Oh, Oh, actually, oh yeah, okay.
Isn't that crazy? Now that you're
No,
like thinking about it,
no, it actually makes a lot of sense.
it was also the basis for a TV film, The Town Bully, that aired on ABC on April 23rd of 1988. And this is a show I absolutely love. It appears on Drunk History in the 6th season, and the episode called Drunk Mystery 2 as the first story. And the case was the inspiration for the song Diesel in the Dust from the British hard rock band UFO for their album called Making Contact.
All right. On the second thought, I don't understand the Roadhouse reference.
You do not understand it?
Like there were a lot of bad dudes with like family issues in that, but I don't see like there was no like clear hero in this story. There was no Patrick Swayze.
No,
but to be fair,
maybe Patrick Swayze represents the entire town coming together.
That's fair. To be fair, there is very rarely a Patrick Swayze.
Rest in peace, Patrick Swayze. But there you
Dude
go.
Danced.
That is the story of the town that murdered Ken McElroy.
I'm a fan of this town. Just saying. Like, my mom was born in Missouri. Like, Missouri has always had a good place in my heart, and it doesn't do anything to hurt it. So.
I just can't imagine that of a whole, like, this is not bigger. Like, I haven't heard of this at all. Really, I've never heard of that. And
I mean, like, it doesn't shock me though. Like you said, it's very Wild West. It's like the whole town rose up, and then like everyone's like, "Oh, that guy's no longer around. Oh, that's weird." Huh? He must got eaten by wolves. Who knows?
Guess I'll sleep easy tonight.
Yeah. Oops, my bad.
That dude was so bad. Like, he was just so incredibly terrible.
Yeah.
And to just keep getting away with it.
My dog is very annoyed. I don't know if it's with the story or if it's with me.
Column A, column B.
A little bit of both. But yeah, she's this is the first time that she has been this riled up.
Even she didn't like him, apparently. She was like, yeah, he was a bad dude.
She's like, we gotta go.
All right, so there you have it. Merry Christmas today, because today, as you're hearing it, it is Christmas. 2020.
Watch Muppet Christmas Carol. It's pretty good.
Yes. Watch The Santa Claus. That's one of my favorites. Last week, we talked about The Family Stone, which is a great Christmas movie as well, if you're looking for like a really cool family one. Before we go, of course, if you would like to support the show, we've got some new shirts on the website, asidebsidepodcast.square.site. You can also buy us a coffee. It's buymeacoffee.com/asidebsidepodcast. We also have a Patreon. You can check out any of our social medias. We've got a Facebook, we've got a Twitter, we've got an Instagram. And we would love for you to follow us, to write to us, to message us. Also, you can email us, asidebsidepodcasts@gmail.com. If you've got a story that you want us to look into, I've got a couple of stories that I was sent that I am looking into. They'll be coming up in the next couple of episodes. Real quick, what's up? An hola in Brazil, and good day. I know they don't really say that, but good day in South Australia, Victoria, and New South Wales, and Nova Scotia. How's it going? Also, North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. In Germany. Oregon, we've got Portland and Medford. Hello to you. Little Rock, Arkansas. Also, do you want to sing? I
just don't want Medfield to fill that out, So yeah, you do the whole thing for Germany.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. How about Houston and Lillington, North Carolina? I didn't feel like I needed to say Texas, but I guess I should say Houston, Texas. And
as opposed to Houston, Missouri.
I guess we should shout out Missouri because, man, we really talked about Missouri today.
We talked about Missouri a lot. And
if you are from
Missouri did a lot.
Like if you are from Missouri and you're from maybe that area, or like your family knows that story, I would love to hear a family perspective on that. That would be amazing. You could
so that was basically just to my extended family, who I have a lot of people in Missouri. If you know people, call my people. It's good.
All right, so there you go. That's another episode of A-Side, B-Side Podcast. Don't forget, bad vibes save lives. Adam, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Brooke.
As always, thank you for listening to A-Side, B-Side Podcast. If you enjoy the show, please, if you don't mind, head on over to Apple and leave us a rating or a review. And if you'd like to continue to support the podcast, you can do so by heading on over to Patreon, or you can buy us a coffee, as well as buying merch on our website, asidebsidepodcast.square.site. The warmest of wishes and the happiest of holidays to you this Christmas season. From Adam and I at A-Side, B-Side Podcast, please remember to wear your mask, social distance if you're around people that don't live in your household, and just be safe and happy this Christmas season. Thanks again from us here at A-Side, B-Side Podcast.